Council Ingman.
Here.
Council Calla.
Present.
Council Sanford.
Here.
Council Boncory. Council Barone.
Present.
Council Boyajin. Council Del Vento.
Present.
Vice President Lettieri.
Yeah.
President Driscoll.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item of business is to accept the minutes of May 17th.
Motion to
There's actually one
This
change
one.
we have to make, and I'm trying to find it. This is the, that's a
I'm
typo.
going to recuse myself. I was not at that meeting.
Okay, I don't have it. Where is it? Small things. It's just a number in a motion. It's actually the motion to, for free cash for insurance recovery police special. It says 41,000, there's 1,000.
Okay.
Just
We'll
a
change
note,
that,
so we should amend
Okay,
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay, gotcha.
Great, thanks. Okay, so, first, the next item of business is an appointment.
to approve the minutes.
Oh, motion to, did we do? I think we just did that.
Motion to approve is amended.
Motion
As
as
amended.
As amended.
Amended, yeah.
Okay, motion to accept as amended.
Second.
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
No, thank you. Next item is an appointment. It is the appointment of Pasquale DeFeo as a constable, Pat DeFeo. I don't know if Pat's here, but we're going to, I'd like to make a motion, or I take a motion to appoint
Motion.
Pat.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No, okay. The next item of business is a joint meeting with the town council and the Winthrop Housing Authority. The purpose of the meeting is to nominate and to vote on a successor to Joe Boncory, who, as we all know, was elected to the Senate, and he has resigned his position. The position is the nominee who's voted on tonight, who ends up in this position, will fill Joe's term, which I think was through June 30th, 2017. And so this is a meeting where the two committees work together to make this call. It will be we'll make nominations, and then it will be based on, the decision will be based on the majority vote of the two committees. I think from the Housing Authority, you have two folks there? Three? Three, yeah. Yeah, great.
Okay,
Good,
cool.
good, welcome, thank you. We have two candidates, two folks who have expressed interest in this. One is, I have the organized here. One of them is Peter Gill has sent in some paperwork to can be considered as being an appointee, and the other one, I don't have the other one. Mr. Conley. You have that here?
You got that today.
It just came. The other person is Coleman Conley. So we have two folks who have submitted information and indicated that they're interested in this position, and so I would accept the nomination for both of these candidates.
Sure, I would like to place Peter Gill's name in nomination.
Second.
Second?
Second.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We do a roll call, and then you can
do
the second one.
You want to just get the nominations first, and go
Yeah.
through each?
I'll nominate, is it Thomas
Coleman.
Conley?
Yeah.
Coleman Conley.
Coleman Conley. Is there a second?
I'll second for discussion.
Okay, second. All those in favor, say aye.
Hang on.
Aye.
Okay, opposed?
Motion to close nominations?
Motion to close.
Second.
Second? All right, then we'll take a roll call vote on these candidates. And so we'll go through each candidate, we'll go through each person here, including the Housing Authority. And
Right. We have to get the names, I need the names on who's here for the housing.
Ready?
Yeah. Okay.
Mr. Ferraro, Mr. Caggiano, and Mr. Holmes.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
so we'll take a roll call vote.
so we're going to do roll call for the town council first
Yes.
on the nomination of Peter Gill.
Yes. The nomination,
No,
choose
nomination.
one or the other.
Choose one or the other.
Yes.
Okay. Council Ingman,
Peter Gill?
Counselor Calla?
Peter Gill.
Counselor Sanford?
Peter Gill.
Counselor Boncory? Counselor Barone?
Peter Gill.
Counselor Boyajin? Counselor Del Vento?
Peter Gill.
Vice President Lettieri?
Here you go.
President Driscoll?
Peter Gill. So it's unanimous. Peter, oh, not yet, I'm sorry, you need, excuse me.
Mr. Ferraro?
I'm not used to these joint hearings.
Peter Gill.
Mr. Caggiano?
Peter Gill.
Mr. Holmes?
Peter Gill.
Thank you. It is unanimous.
Okay.
Unanimous.
It's unanimous, great. Congratulations, Peter.
Peter Gill it is.
Thank you.
All right.
Maureen says thank you, too.
Yeah, Maureen.
Maureen says thank you.
Okay, we now have a series of public hearings. We have 4 public hearings that will begin, and we'll start with the first hearing, and that is a hearing to transfer $259,000 from Fund 932 to the General Stabilization Fund to MEMA Fund 583. So we open that public hearing up. Is there some discussion?
Mr. President. I will say the Finance Committee met on this earlier tonight after a lengthy discussion with the town manager and the CFO, and made a recommendation to move forward with a positive recommendation to the council.
Is there any discussion from the public?
If I could just have the town manager just explain, or the CFO just explain.
Sure. We had a funding balance that needed to be paid for from last year's storm to be reimbursed from FEMA. And we had collected all of our costs associated with such and had an accounting done through FEMA, and 3 reviews of that took place through our FEMA representatives who in each instance had affirmed that those were accurate and verifiable costs associated with the storms that for which we were to receive reimbursement from FEMA. And we had held those funds in abeyance from last year's full accounting to be reimbursed. And when the final chapter was being written on getting that reimbursement, we have learned that the 4th review from FEMA declared a certain element of those costs to be not denied and not reimbursable, to our shock, frankly, for which we now have appealed that decision, considering the fact that we were assured by 3 other FEMA representatives that those costs were eligible for reimbursement. So we're in the process of appealing. Be that as it may, we have a deficit on our books of $259,000 that we now are required to cover through existing revenues, so that we don't have a declared deficit on our books going into our reconciliation and our filing of our Schedule A with the Commonwealth. So we have to cover the cost now and look for reimbursement after our appeal hopefully is successful with FEMA. We have spoken to the Congresswoman Clark about this issue. They are taking all of our matters forward to the necessary representatives from FEMA and asking for reconsideration of this final decision. We explained in our meeting with the Finance Committee that certainly these costs were attributable to the storms for which we were to receive reimbursement. Now that we've fixed the roads, it's very difficult for us to show now that the roads in fact were damaged by the storms. So it's a bit of a impracticality, that we just can't prove what they want us to prove. And we're doing everything we can to file appropriate receipts and pictures and photos of Google Earth photographs and all this that nature to support our position. We think we have a good chance of seeing this reimbursement, particularly because they approved it 3 times and only denied it at the 4th review. So, I'm hopeful that we'll see this reimbursement, but be that as it may, we need to cover this revenue deficit with existing revenue.
Yeah.
Council?
Any other cities or towns having the same issue with them?
You know, I haven't heard that.
Mhm.
I'm not hearing an outcry. I think this is unfortunately somewhat unique to Winthrop.
Is there any other comments from the public, from the council?
Just
If not, we'll close that.
Just a
public-
question.
I'm sorry.
Just a
Council
question.
Barone.
So if I heard correctly, you were saying that they needed proof that we repaired the roads?
Well, their final determination was that they didn't have enough information about the actual damages that were assessed. Now, we have submitted all of the records necessary to make that determination. In fact, that passed, the review of 3 other FEMA representatives. To ask for more documentation at this stage is ridiculous, frankly. We think that, this is just an effort by FEMA to control their expenses, frankly, because as we've become well aware, FEMA is in an extreme deficit at the federal level. And so there seems to be a movement at that level to deny, act almost like an insurance company, deny first and then see what gets promulgated after that fact. And if we continue to pursue our case, hopefully they'll see the wisdom of approving, because we're not going away on this.
Yeah.
We were assured that we were going to get this reimbursed.
Council Angman?
I'm sorry.
What is the appeal process?
It's working basically up the food chain at FEMA and then going to a regional review manager who sits over the person who made this decision.
Is it a formal appeal or is it
Yes,
just?
it is a formal appeal.
Council Sanford?
And does the documentation come from our DPW, from private contractors? And is there a peer review or something that we can kind of solidify our point?
That's a good point, Counselor. All the documents came from our DPW,
Right.
who had, files
Right.
of documents with photographs and all the necessary, what anyone would consider legitimate, evidence of, damage.
Is there any time frame for the expected?
We don't have
process?
experience in appeals on this matter. We're hoping that we get an expedited review.
Yeah.
But that being said, we need to ensure that this deficit is closed prior to year end.
Yeah.
So the appeals process would just be what timeline we have for getting the money back. But we have to fund this prior to the end of the year.
Close of the books, yeah. Okay. Good. Okay. Any other comments? Okay, so I forgot the hammer, but we'll close this public hearing and begin the next one. The next public hearing is on, and we'll be voting on these items later on in the meeting. The next public hearing is to vote for the use of $125,000 of free cash to fund the Ferry Enterprise Fund. Tom Manager?
Well, we had, again, the Finance Commission met on this, committee met on this earlier with lengthy discussion, voted to move it forward. I'm going to let the town manager explain it because you can do a much better job than I can.
Yeah.
I did pass out to the council a quick review of every expense of the ferry. You'll recall that we are in the transportation business. The council authorized an expenditure to start this enterprise through an enterprise fund for expenditure for startup expenses and for the close of the fiscal year operating expenses. We have provided you a full iteration of every expense so far for the ferry, together with a reporting of existing revenues. The issue that we face as a municipality, it's fairly rare that a municipal agency would be in small business. It's just not a shoe that most committees wear. But here we are. We don't run on a cash basis. We have to collect our funds and keep them in reserve and then apply them once they get certified by the Commonwealth as available and legitimized, essentially, revenue derived from the business you're in. So we can't go and apply them on a daily or weekly or monthly basis. We have to hold them. In the meantime, we incur expense. So we have to cover those expenses with existing revenue. And you'll see that we have incurred both startup expense of roughly $18,522 of startup expense plus general overhead for running the ferry since April 1st. And that includes, what you typically know is all of the runs that we do together with some overhead for management, as well as gas and maintenance and other matters that go into the operation. We're a nonprofit, so we only incur those expenses that we need to, plus charge off what the actual expenses are for the enterprise itself. You authorized a $100,000 expenditure. We're looking to cover $125,000 to close the year, simply because we have to keep the revenues that we've earned in abeyance and wait till those get certified as retained earnings in the following fiscal year. So they'll become available. The revenues will become to reapply, just as some of you are familiar with the recreation or the rink enterprise funds. Similar retained earnings are held and then available for reapportionment in the subsequent fiscal year. So we're asking for $125,000 to cover the distance that we for the quarter and for the startup expenses as well. And it's consistent with the business plan that we submitted. And, we are operating, I think, at a very reasonable and quite, I think, impressive rate at this point. We're gaining revenue and ridership. With the weather turning in our favor, we're optimistic that we'll see a lot more utilization of the ferry in June, July, and August. We'll be heading out to Harbor Islands and offering other excursions, as well as meeting with other potential points of interest in using the ferry. For example, Quincy has asked us to consider extending some service to them as well. So there are opportunities that are becoming available to us that we're exploring so that we can bring in revenue and keep the cost of the town of Winthrop as low as possible. I think we're meeting our obligation as we stated to the council in our business plan, and I'm pleased with the performance of the ferry thus far. We had some issues, like anything that you buy new. It has its wrinkles, and you have to work it out. But we seem to have hit that stride now in terms of operating, and all reports from the users of the vessel are very, very favorable for the most part. So I encourage everyone to use the ferry. I'll certainly be interested in getting any direction the council wants to give with respect to marketing the ferry. You might have seen our billboard on 1A. That's the beginning of a bigger marketing effort that we need to make as far as the vessel is concerned. But all in all, I think we're very much in the within the realm of what we expected to incur in terms of expense. So now you've authorized it. Now we have to fund it through available revenue.
I think that, and we talked about this a little bit in the Finance Committee, that if people got an opportunity to ride in the ferry, I think they'd use it more than once. I mean, I think there might be, if there's some way that we can think of, and I mentioned like a robo-mail to the entire town, we talked about including something in the tax bills, offering people a half-price one fare or something like that. I think if we should be thinking about that just to get people exposure to it, because I think once they take it, and I've taken it. It's a pleasurable trip, and I think the more people we get to use it once, the more traffic we're going to get on it from our own town. So I think if there's some way that we can think of doing that, I think that could be good.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll take that as a recommendation from the council and see what we can do to implement something.
Good. Is there any other discussion, Councilor?
Yeah, and I just want to simplify one of the things that, some of the things about this item. One, we already authorized $125,000 to be spent. We just never put up $125,000. And with the revolving accounts, they lag a year behind. So, as we all know, the money gets in the account now, but we can't use it until next year. Actually, until probably after September, October of next year. So this is it's the seed money. It's a one-time deal. It's to get the account back up and running, so that we can stay fiscally stable with it, as well as meet all department revenue guidelines that have to be met.
Council England?
Thanks. This may not be the meeting to do this, but I'm certainly interested to know more about what the marketing plan is going forward and how the ridership is sort of keeping up with expectations throughout the summer and checking in on a pretty regular basis, for how things are going. Tonight's probably not the time to do that, but.
Yeah, I think that maybe that's a regular part of the manager's report, not every week, but once a month or so.
And you raise a great question, Counselor, and it's come to my attention that we need to have an ongoing and broader discussion about marketing, not just the ferry, but the town. We're positioning the community in a new way to be discovered and to welcome people to our restaurants and to our community and to have means to get here as well. And so I think we do have to have a broader discussion about how do we market the community. I would invite, comments and thought from the council about maybe having a marketing workshop or a brainstorming session with stakeholders and throwing some ideas together, because what ends up happening, unfortunately, is we go out and pursue a marketing idea and end up paying the full cost on that, and yet that marketing has value, transitory value across other spectrums, right? If we market Winthrop, other folks have kind of value from that who are in the business in Winthrop, and we think there should be a partnership in that marketing effort. So we'd like to see a bigger discussion about how we can share those efforts and costs as well.
I think that's really important.
Yeah. Yeah, and I agree with Councilor Ingman. The other thing is, we have to reinvent the wheel. I mean, Boston Harbor Cruise Lines, what do they do? And obviously, it's a different venue, or Quincy, or Situate. Where's the other ferry come out of? Hingham. What do they do, to market their ferry, and what could we learn from them? I think might be in, a direction at least to get some ideas from. But I agree, a campaign needs to be had, and we have to market the ferry as well as Winthrop.
Councilor Cowell?
And, in talking about putting something in the tax bills or the water bills or whatever, what about some type of a coupon, like say a $2 coupon or something? And, maybe we can put them out into some of the restaurants or some of the businesses so that people see them, and even out of towns, some other places, so that people say, oh, well, let's try the ferry. I've got a $2 coupon, or you know what I mean? And it just kind of, sometimes that does prompt people to utilize something.
Yeah, good idea. Coupon. Any other conversation? Karen Chavez?
Hi, Karen Charles, Precinct 2. I think I'm more confused now than I was before. This is an enterprise fund that is in existence now or July 1?
It's in existence now.
And it has a zero balance?
It was never funded, I believe.
Appropriated.
Yeah.
Now,
Appropriation.
Councilor Del Vento just commented on a revolving fund. Which is it?
It's
It's an enterprise fund.
yeah.
So you never put any money in. So this enterprise fund has zero money in it.
Correct.
I'm really confused. Because how can it be in existence with zero money? Why was money not put in it when the enterprise fund was voted by you people?
Authorized $100,000 to be expended.
I think, I'll let these folks
Right.
answer that if they.
The council authorized $100,000 to be expended, which we are allowed to do under the law.
Okay,
But what is expected of us is to have a reconciliation, to know, did we spend that? Did we not spend that? We have to come to the council with a year-end balance that's accurate, not one that's guesswork. So we incur expense, we report it, we ask for the money that will actually pay for the goods and services that went into the ferry, okay, and not an estimate of what it is. So we don't ask for the actual dollars until the dollars have been, verified. And so now we're coming and we're at the close of the fiscal year. We know what our expenses are. We're asking for those expenses to be covered. And yes, we have a little bit of a delta there to make sure we close the year and without any kind of a revenue deficit. So we can verify what has gone into the ferry, where it's gone, how things have been spent, and now have verifiable costs to show for what we've done. When we open an enterprise fund for the first time, we can't have live money in it. Okay, we have to actually show what we're doing and where the expenditures have gone. And that's what we've done. Revenues are another story. We can't use revenues on a cash basis. We have to declare them after the close of the fiscal year, and then they'll come back to the enterprise as retained earnings.
But this has been going now since April 19th. How are you paying the salaries?
We're paying the salaries generally through the liquidity of the town,
Okay,
okay?
so would the town be reimbursed for that?
Naturally, that's what we're doing now. We're asking for the actual dollars to be appropriated for the expenditures incurred. Yes,
But you were asking for $125,000 to go into this account,
yes,
and supposedly 25 of that is to pay for expenses already incurred.
that's right.
Will that $25,000
So
go back
it's
to the
an
town?
accounting thing that the fund was created and given an authorization. We appropriate expenditures, we don't appropriate revenues. Revenues come in and the total revenues and total expenditures have to balance for the revenue fund or have a surplus on revenues. We can have a deficit where our expenditures are higher than the revenues for the fund. So what we're doing is we're taking money and we're putting it in to cover a revenue deficit. So that way we won't have a deficit. So at the end of the year, the fund will have a balance in it instead of a deficit, which then would cause other implications to our free cash, to the tax rate, and create lots of problems.
Then, Michael, when the free cash is certified, whenever, September, October, will that money be credited to this enterprise fund, or will it come back into the general fund?
Enterprise fund.
It's the enterprise fund.
Retained earnings.
It'll be retained
So-
earnings into the enterprise account.
So that's, isn't that being paid twice now, then?
No,
It'll be
it's,
next fiscal year.
It'll be available for expenditure for next fiscal year, for reappropriation by the council.
Part of the
Within
enterprise fund?
Yes, so, in
No,
other
back
words.
to the general fund?
No.
You and I are gonna have to talk, because I'm really,
Maybe we'll take it
I-
offline.
Yeah.
I think that we could talk afterwards.
yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
okay.
No, it's fine.
Tony Evangelista, precinct.
Thank you for reminding my name.
Okay.
I just would like to say that several times I've been on the shuttle, also with my granddaughter. I put a video, I may have sent it to the town manager. Did I?
Yes,
It was beautiful.
it is.
But the, what's been discussed here, many things come to my mind, and I love it. I wish I could become captain. What I'm looking for here is future expenditures. In other words, you're going to have an upkeep with, say, fuel. I know where you're going to get the fuel across the harbor, where you dock on the right-hand side of the fuel tanker ship. But the thing is, what is your upkeep? Where are you going to dock it during the winter? You have to have supplies if it breaks down, no?
Yeah, so that's all happening. I mean, that's in the budget. There's a budget for the ferry, and
Okay,
So we-
excuse my ignorance, but what is the total budget that's total in there to run this thing for the end of the year, to dock it, where it's gonna be docked, how to supply it, how to prepare it for next year, season, et cetera?
I mean, there's a whole there's a whole spreadsheet on where the funds have gone so far.
I can be able to meet, I don't know.
I'm sure you can take a look
But
at
it
it.
is
yeah.
great, I tell you, I like it.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Good,
thank you.
thank you. Any other questions or comments? Council Sanford?
No, I just wanted to remind you, we're not quite in public comment yet. We're still in hearings, right?
It's a public hearing.
Okay, I'm sorry.
It's a
Yeah,
public hearing,
okay.
so anybody
Yeah.
can speak.
I'm sorry, yeah.
It's okay. Any other questions before I close?
It's okay. I
Great.
apologize.
Then I'll close this public hearing. We'll go to this third one, which is a vote to use $36,250 of free cash for the Ferry Vessel Special Revenue Fund unrecognized balance. Now, this is something that's different from the operating funding of the vessel. And I'll let Town Manager McKenna explain that.
Yeah, this is the final reconciliation on the actual capital expense of the ferry. The town has an obligation to fund its share in the acquisition of the ferry. When the state comes in and analyzes its portion, or wherever the other revenues that come in, there's a reconciliation that occurs, and we have our outstanding balance of $36,250 that we have to put in as our requisite share of the expense of the acquisition. That all has been done. We know what that expense now is, and we have to pay that difference. The town has paid roughly $260,000 in a share of a $1.2 million vessel. We have to climb a little bit more to cover our pro rata share in that expense, and that's what this funding is required to do.
Any questions or comments regarding that?
Mr. President.
Council Del Vento.
And again, the Finance Committee met on this and moved it forward with a positive recommendation to the full council.
I did want to say one thing positive. I know I'm outspoken, but I do want to say one thing positive about this ship. It's the state of the art. When you're in it, the air quality control systems are out there. 21st century, all had eyes to develop.
Good.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you. The first thing I know.
Thanks. Okay, then no other comments, questions? I'll close that hearing. And we now have a hearing regarding a proposition from Verizon Wireless. There's some folks here, I think, who want to make a presentation. Some folks want to. This is regarding installing some equipment on a phone pole on Pleasant Street. And we're required to have a public hearing on this request. This group has met with the DPW subcommittee a week or so ago, and this is their opportunity to present this idea to the community.
If you need to pass that along, that'll give you a little more detail on what's being proposed.
So, good evening.
Thank you.
My name is Michael Jarmo. We live from Robinson Cole, representing Verizon Wireless. And we have a team of different specialties here in case questions come up. So as part of expanding the network to accommodate the next generation, the current generation of wireless services, which are very data intensive, Verizon Wireless needs to expand the capacity in its network. It also needs to fill in coverage gaps that exist, and they've identified one in Winthrop that they're trying to serve through what's called a small cell. So traditionally, you're familiar with tall cell towers that have multiple antennas all over them, or buildings that might have multiple antenna installations. Typically, it was 4 antennas on 3 sides. These small cells are very different. It's typically 1 antenna. It's equipment mounted directly to the utility pole, an antenna in a canister at the top. It's about a 2-foot tall piece of equipment. And they tie right into available electricity and telecom fiber for the backhaul to the switch. And this fits into the Verizon Wireless network. And what it'll do is it'll add signal in the immediate area, and it will provide coverage in that area for folks who are on the Verizon Wireless network for public safety purposes, for personal convenience, business, and so forth. And you're probably familiar with some of the data services which are available now in cars. There's different types of applications that will help you not get lost, or will do other things that involve a fair amount of data. And that's what the purpose of this is. These have been installed in other places around the country. More recently in Massachusetts, we've had several approved in Winchester. We're working with the city of Boston to get some approved there. Various other, Amesbury has some up already, and pretty soon there'll be a lot of communities that have these small cell installations. Verizon will still need to do some macro cells, the larger cells occasionally, but most of the effort for the immediate future is on these smaller cells. And so the engineers identified a pole that provided the necessary coverage. They designed the site, which is shown on these plans. And this is the markup that shows the antenna. It'll be about a 2 to 3 foot mount on the top of the existing pole, and then there'll be equipment that's set off about 8 feet off the ground along the side of the pole. similar to the kinds of equipment that the cable company and the telephone company have already put on other poles. It's just those aren't for the wireless network application. This is. So we have folks here who can answer questions that people might have about this issue.
I'll open that up to discussion. Council Sanford?
Yeah, I mean, I got a couple of calls on Councilman from Precinct 5 with some concerns, both technical and location. As you know, that's a pretty severe curve right there, and vehicles tend to go a little bit beyond the speed limit. Lots of those homes have been hit by vehicles coming both from Pleasant, Pauline, as well as coming from Washington Ave. So it's really a vulnerable spot, in my opinion, and I think the neighbors are feeling the same thing. So that's number one. That's a number one concern. The second thing is having an intrusive visual in front of some of that residential area, as well as some concerns with whether it's magnetic or whether it's some of the signals that it's generating. So, I'm really hesitant to place this in this particular position. However, I'd like to hear a little bit more from you, but that's my point of view.
Sure. I guess, Dan, you can address some of the technical aspects of this?
Yeah, of course. Dan Brown, RF engineer with C-Square Systems. As mentioned, the site is being proposed to provide additional network capacity and coverage to this targeted area.
Could you speak up, please?
Oh, of course. As mentioned, the site is being proposed to provide additional network capacity and coverage to this targeted area of Winthrop. Specifically, the existing macro site, which is the main layer of the network that's currently serving the area, that's the facility located in the church steeple, basically right across from Town Hall. That site has been flagged by Verizon to exceed its capacity limit to serve the area. So this is part of the reason why this site's being proposed. This particular pole is located on the outside bend of the road, which gives a great line of sight to provide service up and down the road and around the adjacent neighborhoods. It was identified as a pole that can provide the best coverage potential.
I think were there questions about the signals that are emitted, or there's a concern,
Yeah,
health concern?
That's a health concern.
Yeah, John, I don't know, maybe, John, you can give a little background on that, please. Don Hayes is the health physicist.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Donald Hayes. I'm a certified health physicist. I'm not a Verizon Wireless employee. I'm an independent consultant hired to look at this particular facility from a Federal Communications Commission standpoint, an FCC standpoint, and then also to ensure that the site would comply with the Department of Public Health regulations regarding exposure to electromagnetic fields. As Attorney Jaimo said, these sites are getting more and more popular. I know I did several, up to a dozen sites for the town of Wellesley. Many years ago, sites this short at 35 feet that was the norm for cities like Denver. For example, you could by right put a full cell site at 35 feet. What we're talking about here, though, is as Dan pointed out, this is a very low power site. It's an omnidirectional antenna, very similar to the light you get from a candle. In other words, it goes off relatively evenly in all directions. What we have here is a total of 715 watts on top of the light pole. I was observing out here earlier, we have a light pole that has 6 500-watt quartz on it, so you're talking 3 kilowatts up there, and here we're talking less than a kilowatt. As far as the signal strength, at this particular frequency, when I do the analysis, the technical analysis, this is really gets technical here, but we're looking at less than 1% of the allowable standard for anybody on the ground 24/7. So, in other words, you could have up to 100 of these on this one pole, and it would still be within the public limits for exposure 24/7. Therefore, with my analysis, my conclusion would be that the site would be well compliant and well within the allowable exposure limits, and therefore there should not be any concern for this type of installation at this facility. Thank you.
I have a couple of questions. First of all, it's attached to this pole. This is an existing pole that was there?
Yes.
Okay. And then there's sort of like a wire and then an anchor, like another?
Yeah, that's a pole that is a guide pole for the,
And that goes
For the pole
across the
across the street.
sidewalk and pretty much almost onto someone's property?
Yeah, it's all.
yeah, that's an existing pole that was installed by the utility company in connection with the pole across
No,
the
I
street.
know the pole, but the extra piece.
We're not adding any
anchor
guy
piece.
wires or anything to that pole. That pole looks just like the picture you're looking at in there.
Because there's a wire and then an anchor
Right, and
here.
that's, and so
That's
that's there,
already there
that's there
too?
today, yes.
Why was that particular spot picked? Is there any other ones in Winthrop?
Well, that spot was picked, the site would have to be in that immediate area to cover the gap and the excess that they're trying to cover. The data is needed in that, or the capacity is needed in that area. There's a pole across the street, it has a transformer on it and a lot of other equipment on it. So it was determined that that pole couldn't accommodate this equipment, so this was the best location, as Dan mentioned before, because it can see up both directions of the street based on its position on the corner.
And it has to be on the sidewalk. It couldn't be something that could be put behind something or beside a tall building or someplace where it's
Well,
not so visual, like,
I mean, again, we're trying to do this on the existing utility pole, so that the pole's already there. The town has already allowed that pole to be placed at that location. We're looking at that because state law allows us to mount our equipment on those poles. We're looking at that as a location that serves this need and is the best location that serves this need. So that's the reason that was
and
picked.
that anchor, the other piece there, that's already there? too?
All already there.
Really?
Yeah.
Councilor Terry?
Thank you for comment. I have a few questions. First of all, just for clarification, this is a Verizon pole that Verizon Wireless is trying to put a piece of equipment on.
This would be a pole that's owned jointly by National Grid and Verizon.
Okay. Are you here asking us for permission, or are you here just to inform us of what you're going to do?
The process we were told to go through was your grant of location process. Now typically a grant of location is the location of the pole itself. You've already done that, presumably because this pole is in place. And so we were asked to make this presentation to you. In the past, when we've come to Winthrop, we've gone to the Board of Appeals when there's a site that involves the use of a building, or if there were to be a tower site on private property. That was the process that was set out. In this case, the building inspector advised that that process didn't apply, and we were asked to come before your council, which we're happy to do. And the vehicle is the grant of location process.
So again, you're asking for us to grant the location?
We were asking for you to grant a location. I think we have a legal right under state law to attach to utility poles, and we have certain rights under the Federal Telecommunications Act, but you also have authority to approve grants of location, and that's what we're asking you to do.
Now, have there been complaints? I'm a Verizon wireless user and live in the area and have no issues. Are there complaints from users in that area that their signals are poor?
I assume there must have, I can tell you just, and this is anecdotal, but my personal experience when I was in town a month or so ago, I think it must have been the first round of hearings the night you scheduled this, and I went by and looked at that pole, and I couldn't carry a signal in that area. It may have been at a busy time of day, and sometimes that affects whether you can get signal or not. Dan is the RF engineer. He can explain a little more what they're trying to accomplish with this site, but what I heard him say before was the church tower antennas are exhausted. Basically, the capacity that they serve in town is used up during peak hours, and so there needs to be additional signal to accommodate people who are using their phones. And also these networks are designed with the idea that as technology evolves, we want to be able to meet that technology. So there's a little lead time on these sites as well. But data is growing exponentially. Data usage is growing exponentially. All the carriers, but particularly Verizon Wireless as the largest carrier in the area, is seeing great increase in demand on their sites, and they're trying to build these sites as soon as they can to get the capacity in the hands of the customers.
And visually, it's a residential neighborhood. I would prefer it not be there personally, and I would not vote for it, but there's a location, there's a town property, a high school, middle school right down the street, which would be more in keeping, I guess, with some sort of device like this on top of it, in which case you'd be leasing from the town. Why was a location like that? Is this a cost issue that, would you be paying Verizon a fee to put this device there?
There is a fee, but there's also a state law that gives wireless companies the right to attach to utility poles. And for these small installations, that's the appropriate use. You don't want to build a new tower for installation like this. There's no need to. It's a single antenna and a few pieces of equipment. That's what utility poles are, are designed for. I mean,
Well, I don't think originally they were designed to have all the equipment that we have on them now, because it's very obtrusive. It's disgusting to drive down streets and see double poles and everything else, which isn't really why you're here. But I don't think back 100 years ago they were designed for all the stuff that's on them now.
But I
But
think the telegraph wires, there was a time.
there was different, it's different times. It's a different time, but I think now it's more of a, people want a clean, sleek look, and they don't want stuff added.
Well, I think
They'd
they
like to
want
have stuff
coverage.
deleted.
Excuse me.
They do want coverage, and that's why we have, I can't even say how many antennas we have on the water tower and on the church. But like anything else, progress, I guess, brings with it some issues. But, I just wish that there was more thought put into a better site that's not as intrusive to neighbors, and at a location where that pole, I believe, over the last, and the police chief, I believe, is here, and fire chief, can I ask how many times that pole has been hit by a vehicle in the last number of years? Or if it has?
Well, we had it 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
We typically have, on that particular bend, 3 to 5 accidents per year on that curve. Some involve the pole, others involve the houses behind those poles.
Okay.
So that, as Councilor Sanford, who lives in that area, knows, and stated so earlier, that is a problem corner for us.
And I understand that advancements have to be made, and there's a lot of wireless communications going out. I just wish some more thought, and maybe it was, but that we were involved with, that would be a less intrusive, less dangerous, as far as I'm concerned, area. But thank you for coming, I appreciate your comment.
Councilor Corey?
Yeah, I also received quite a few calls about this, as many calls as I received about the houseboats, I think. And the neighbors are concerned, and especially the neighbors in the houses that are right adjacent to that pole, about the electromagnetic waves. And although he says that they are safe for the town, what about for that immediate neighborhood, the house that's in front of that pole? I want that kind of answer. I also want to know how far an area this is going to cover, because the only dead area I see in Winthrop when I drive around, and I drive around on my cell phone all the time, is at the end of Pleasant Street. When you hit Woodside Hardware, you completely go dead with a Verizon, all the way to the bridge and past the bridge on both sides. That's the only dead area I know. And is this pole going to cover that area if we allow this place?
So Dan, you can talk coverage, and then Don can address the house.
Yeah, of course. You did mention this spot by Woodside Ace Hardware.
Yes.
Verizon, a few months ago, back in last fall, they did get approval to construct a cell site on top of the rooftop of Ace Hardware. That will address the coverage and capacity issue near that intersection, that targeted area. This particular pole will address the southwestern residential side of Winthrop. I mean, the question comes up, why aren't we using some sort of a built-in? It's all residential there, targeted area. The pole is, Verizon sees this pole as the least, or the best aesthetically looking option, the least invasive option. It's it's about 2.5 foot tall antenna. It's all fiberglass. It visually mimics like a transformer, you might see. It's a foot wide. So on the pole will be an antenna and a radio. The pole will be fed by power and fiber that feeds the radio, and then there'll just be 2 half-inch coax runs from the radio to the antenna.
Councilor Aiken?
I echo some of the concerns of the other counselors here, and just to bring up the aesthetics issue, it looks like there's going to be 2 units. One would be on the top, and one would be in the middle of the pole.
There's an antenna, which is the cylindrical thing on the left
Yep.
side of your page.
Yep.
You've got the page you're looking at, the detail sheets, and then there's a radio and electrical equipment, and that's on the right side of your page. So
And that's fairly large. It's 3 feet by 1 feet approximately.
It's about 3 feet by 1 feet, that's right. So it's a box that sits on the side of the pole, similar to boxes you can see on other poles around the town. It's not,
So that, it's potentially sort of right outside someone's window. Will it be at 11 feet?
it's not right outside anybody's window any more than the pole already is. It's right on the pole.
Right. I'm just concerned, we have a lot of unsightly poles in the town already, and adding more bulk.
May have
Council
answered.
Sanford?
You may have answered.
I think I didn't get an answer from.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Don, you want to talk about the houses?
As far as my analysis included from the base of the pole out to at least 10,000 feet. And beyond 10,000 feet, I know the signal's going to just keep getting lower and lower and lower, so there's no
So
reason.
what about 40 feet?
Beyond
What about 10 feet from the pole, 15 feet from the pole?
Right, my analysis included from the base, that's 0, out to at least 2,000 feet in the written.
So, but Don, I think there's a very specific question here, which is if somebody is in this building here, or in that building there, to those levels, are those levels compatible with what you talked about before in terms of?
Yeah, those levels are less than 1% of the allowable standards, whether you're talking about 6 feet above the ground or 16 feet above the ground. I analyze both of those.
So you analyze first floor and second floor?
First floor, second floor. The 6 feet above the ground is what the regulatory agencies require us to analyze at. I did the 16 feet only because this particular installation is relatively close to the ground, so I looked at 16 feet as well, and that is well within the allowable standards as well. So yes, I did look at that, and that's for the public standard, which is 24/7.
Council Sanford?
The pole looks like it's probably 40 or 50 feet high, correct? What's the actual?
33.
The existing utility pole elevation is 34 feet 4 inches.
34? And what is the height of the
3 feet almost,
The overall.
the units, where are they gonna go from ground level?
28.
How high?
You're talking about the things on the side?
All the equipment, starting from ground level.
Sure. So there's a meter, typical electrical meter, that's
Okay.
going to be between 5 and 8 feet off the
Yeah.
ground. And then there's going to be the electrical equipment and the radio that we just talked about, and that is going to be at least 10 feet above the ground. I mean, I think there's some flexibility in terms of exactly where that goes, but it's going to be 10 feet off the ground. And part of that is so that nobody complains that they're going to bump into it walking down the sidewalk, or, you know, it's not going to face the street, but it is going to face the side usually, and so you make it higher than people can reach, or it's not going to interfere with somebody. And then the antenna at the top is a canister. It's 12 inches wide, which is roughly the diameter of that pole, and it's cylindrical, and it goes up from the top of the pole.
3 feet, 28
It's 3 feet,
inches.
including the mounting attachment. There's a bracket at the top of the pole that holds it down.
Council Cowell?
What concerns me is that you said, it was mentioned there was a dead spot down near Woodside Hardware, and something's going to be put down there to take care of that spot. And now you want to put another one here on Pleasant Street to take care of that spot. It sounds like every place that there's going to be a dead spot, are we going to start seeing these cropping up everywhere?
Well, the
I mean,
one
how
on,
much area do they cover?
the one on Woodside Hardware is on the rooftop. That went through the Board of Appeals. That was approved last
Well, why
fall.
doesn't that cover Pleasant Street?
But, well, it doesn't. I mean, that's the technical.
How far does
guy.
it cover? I mean,
Answer
how
the
much
question.
coverage do you get out of these things?
The specific coverage of that site on the top of Woodside Hardware was addressed at that particular hearing, but that was a coverage and capacity site. It's the trend.
How much is what was the coverage? I wasn't at the meeting, I'm sorry.
So with the increase in voice and data services, the trend has been going towards having one giant site that covers a very broad area that you might see more of a rural environment because the traffic is distributed over a broader area. Two, we have multiple more smaller cell sites where we can provide additional resources and capacity to better serve the population.
So I guess the question that's being asked is that, are there plans to put more of these in the town?
There are other areas of Verizon, they're constantly monitoring the network. There may be other areas that need to be addressed at some point in the future, but they will not affect the coverage in this particular area. This is a very
I'm almost thinking aesthetically, we're gonna start seeing these things pop up all over the place.
Well, you might, and you might see a few more. Winthrop's a pretty densely populated town. Winchester, where we went, which is a very residential town, but also very densely populated. We went on 5, or were approved to go on 5 poles there. I don't know if they've been installed yet. Boston, there's going to be dozens, if not hundreds, of these sites in Boston, which is much more densely populated in some areas. So a lot of it has to do with the density of usage of the network.
Mr. President?
Councilor Brown?
You want to go first?
Yeah, I would like to address Councilor Call's question, which I don't think was properly addressed. All of these questions came up in the subcommittee meeting, and this is sort of a repeat of it all. But to speak to Councilor Call's concern, I don't think that gentleman from C Squared answered it. She wanted to know, if I'm correct, whether the tower that is on the hardware store, Ace Hardware, could indeed cover the region that you're trying to cover with this small cell tower.
No. I do have a map. I have a coverage plot that was submitted in the RF affidavit that was submitted as part of the application. Briefly go over.
Yeah, that'd be helpful.
Absolutely. So this is the best server plot. The intent here is to highlight the particular sector of the existing Winthrop site that has been flagged to exceed its capacity limit. As you can see, the black symbols show the locations of Verizon's existing facilities in the area. The Winthrop site, located in the steeple of the First Church of Winthrop. Winthrop 2 is located on the rooftop of the Elks Lodge. And then in the gray symbols towards the north represent 2 other approved facilities that Verizon has yet to activate, but they have already received full approval. As you can see, the particular site on Ace Hardware only covers down to about halfway to Pleasant Street. It is unable, due to just sheer distance, to cover any further and provide capacity relief to this area.
Does that answer the question? Councilor Cal?
Yeah, it does. It does answer the question that more are going to be cropping up, and they're not wires. I thought it was a wire, but they're actually these canisters in there. You know, there's a couple of them, one on the top and on the side, and
Councilor Del Vento?
And, I'm actually for this, and I'm going to tell you why. The situation comes down to everybody's happy putting big, high-power sites in certain locations that aren't near their house. I'm at the water tower. That's the area I represent. And everybody that, is happy jamming every high-power antenna on that water tower with no effect of how it looks or the impacts of the neighborhood. Everybody wants to use their smartphone. Everybody's got to, if you look in your pockets, I'm going to guarantee you at least one out of half the people here have a smartphone. You want data. You need the data available. You've got to get the transmission somehow. These smaller sites are lower power and more of them. So you're going to see a lot more of these sites, a lot more of them coming everywhere, all over the country, because as long as you want to use your smartphone everywhere you go, you're going to need to be able to access something somewhere. And the other alternative is putting big, high-power sites where they're not at your house. Everybody's going to have to face the fact that if you want cell phone reception, you want your smartphone to work, you want to Google, you want to use MapQuest, these sites are going to have to be available. These are low-power sites, a lot of low-power ones as opposed to a lesser number of high-powered ones that are more dangerous. So I'm voting for it, and that's why I am. And I think everybody's going to have to come around to the fact that they're going to be in your backyard. And would you rather a big one in your backyard or a little one in your backyard?
Chief Flanagan?
Yeah, I get 2 things. I just took new residence on Lorraine Terrace, and I had a Verizon kindly charge me $250 last Friday for a network extender. If this was to go up, would that correct my problem?
I'm not sure.
I'm off of Johnson Ave. But my only other question is, you mentioned Wellesley. I've done electrical work in Wellesley, and I can't even run an electrical service overhead anymore. If you want to replace an electrical service, and if it's overhead, you don't have the choice. You got to go underground. So how do you plan on putting these up in communities that insist everything goes underground?
We were permitted to do it in Wellesley. We went through the process. The town actually cooperated with the company and It's a municipal electric company there, so.
Correct.
They approved, and we went through a design review process, and this, basically installations just like this were approved on the poles, and there were, I don't know if it was 20 of them around the town, so.
And gold leaf or anything?
No.
Are they in front
Chief?
of people?
Just a couple
Well,
of
they are.
follow-up
Are
questions.
they in Wellesley?
Yeah, they're along residential streets.
Just a couple of follow-up. You said the meter's going to be at 5 feet high.
The
The height
electrical
of the
meter-
meter is at 5 feet.
Between 5 and 8 feet.
Yeah, the electrical meter here, it says between 5 and 8'6".
I think we'd probably have to reconsider the 5-foot lower limits if you're looking for security of your equipment. Certainly, that's just one. If you are authorized and they do grant the permission for this to go on the pole, what stops you from adding equipment to that grant of permission that we issue tonight for what we see as a proposed structure to what it then could be down the line if the service, such as the antenna, is overloaded here at the church. If this becomes overloaded, what are we looking at? An extension in bulk of equipment based on, laid on top of this.
Dan, what's the, when you expand these sites, do you go to a new location, is that what it is?
Yeah, if we needed to provide additional capacity or address inadequate coverage anywhere else, we'd likely require a new upgrade in this particular facility, like that, an additional frequency bands, for example, would not improve coverage elsewhere besides this targeted area.
What if this area comes to capacity in 2 years to the existing technology you're putting on today? That's my question. What's the next upgrade for what we see here tonight?
Well, at the moment, Verizon needs to address or improve the network using the tools and technology that's currently available to them. Right now, this is small cells. This is what they're using. These should be the best solution. Verizon is solely just deploying one of their 4 licensed frequency bands on these facilities. It's the higher frequency, it doesn't propagate as far. This benefits them as they're able to provide coverage to a targeted area and not have it bleed elsewhere into the network undesirably.
What happens when they meet capacity? That's
Well, so if you put a
basically
different
my question.
antenna up there, you'd be able to carry multiple spectrums, is that the idea?
Yeah.
Every house right now has maybe 2 devices. If they have kids and they have 5 devices apiece, obviously they're going to have a capacity problem at this particular location. I just wanted to know what's,
It's kind of a race with
what
technology.
are we
right?
buying into? I know what you're proposing, but what are we buying into later on down the line? That's all.
Absolutely. So as I mentioned, Verizon currently owns spectrum across 4 different frequency bands. They're deploying one. It's so if they ever hit capacity, they could always deploy a 2nd, 3rd, or 4th frequency bands, which would simply be just activating the signal to the
So no additional equipment there.
It may require a new radio or a 2nd radio, depending on what the current technology is at that moment in time.
But not in addition to the, additionally, that was the question?
Right now, they're just deploying just a single radio.
I understood you said, well, right now, to speak to the police chief's point, excuse me, through the chair, I'm sorry.
Keep going.
To speak to the police chief's point, he wanted to know if there would be an additional radio, or would it be a different radio? There could be multi-band.
It could be a different multi-band radio.
Okay, so it would not be a 2nd unit. It would be 1 unit, but a different 1 unit, a different singular.
The specifics to a future design I can't speak to exactly right now, but that would need to be addressed at that time.
Well, I was going to mention one of the things, one of the things we've learned about the antennas over the years is they get better and better. They carry more signal in smaller packages. These antennas are under 3 feet long. Those towers, and probably the water tower too, those antennas are 4 to 6 feet long. The equipment's getting smaller, just like the phones are getting smaller. And so part of the evolution is if they upgrade equipment, it could be equipment that's upgraded to carry even more capacity. That's one way they can address it. One way they have addressed capacity shortages at certain locations. The other way would be to add another frequency, which currently I think they can do using the same antenna, and sometimes, as Dan said, sometimes using a different type of radio head. Sometimes, depending on where it is, they might add a 2nd radio head to pick up other spectrum.
Under the grant of authority that you're looking for tonight,
Yeah.
would you have to come back if you're increasing or expanding and putting larger equipment on there?
I don't honestly know the answer to that because this is kind of uncharted territory with this grant of authority. This is the process we were told to go through. Not every community is making us go through a process like this. In some places, it's just a by right installation. So,
Thank you.
Mr. President.
Counselor?
And as, I forgot your name, but we're going to go with it anyway, is the by right situation. That pole is there, the equipment that's on, it's like hanging a transformer. They don't have to come to us to hang a transformer on it. This is kind of in an area that we most likely are just being courteous by doing this. From what I've come to understand from the battles we fought on the water tower, when it goes to court, we lose most of the time at great expense. We have a great track record of that, of fighting antennas and fighting the federal government on permitting these things. And the pole's already there, so the by right is going to be very difficult to stop if we don't grant the authority.
It's not never good to disagree with people that employ you, but on this particular case, I'm going to make an exception. I think the easement that currently exists for those poles, we envision transformers and electrical lines and phone lines, but I don't think people envisioned radio frequencies outside their bedrooms. So I think there's a little bit of difference. I appreciate.
Not in favor of it. I'm looking at it.
Town manager.
Thank you. Yeah, the issue comes up with the FCC and the Federal Telecommunications Act, and the question of whether or not the applicant has shown that the technology proposed is what is adequate to service, the users of the technology. They don't have a great burden to prove anything beyond that. If this location satisfies that need, the federal law preempts local zoning. And that has been proven all over the country to be the case. So the counselor, I would agree, is stating the obvious, that we don't have a lot of standing to deny unless it can be shown that a better location would serve this technology. And that the applicant would have to come forward and prove that another location would be just as valid. And then we would have standing to object to this location. But if that's not being proposed, and this is the location that has to be serviced, and they meet their burden of proof on it, our standing is limited in terms of objecting to this location. Counsel, you want to?
yeah, and we're proposing equipment on a pole that's here. We're not proposing the new pole. If we came in and we were proposing a new pole, I think a lot of these issues about the speed or the accidents on the corner would have more relevance. I mean, at this point, nothing we're doing to this pole is going to change the accident rate for good or bad. If anything, it'll allow people to make a call to 911 if there's a need and know that they're not going to have the call rejected.
Councilors,
Just can you tell me one more time why the pole right across the street, it's already an eyesore and it already has stuff all over it. This stuff can't be used on that pole instead of cluttering another pole that right now is bare and has nothing on it.
Michael, you might know.
Yeah, so
that's Mike Fox, he's the real estate specialist.
I'm sorry about that. Michael Fox, real estate consultant with Vital Site Services. We're actually unable to use utility poles with transformers on them, so that cancels out a lot of the utility poles. The utility pole owners, it's in their guidelines, we can't use anything with transformers on it. And same thing, like C Squared was saying that that pole is on the inside of the curb, so it doesn't provide the best signal.
But it has a transformer on it, is the basic reason.
Exactly.
Councilor Sandley, you all set?
No, I was just talking about, again, going back to vulnerability and the pole getting whacked or the homes getting whacked there, but if the pole is there, I guess it's going to get hit anyways, but I'm not sure you'd make a 911 call from that particular site if the pole were down. Anyway.
Okay. Are there any other comments, questions?
Is it open to the public?
This is a public hearing. Please be brief.
Okay.
Please.
I can't guarantee.
Oh, we can.
My knowledge is this, how many feet above sea level is that pole, on where you're putting it?
It says it's,
Is it at sea level?
72 feet above.
How much?
72, the top, 70 is the top of the.
70.
above sea level. Yeah.
70 feet above sea level.
That's right.
And how many of these are replaced? There's one down here by the hardware store you stated?
That's on the roof, yeah.
Okay, I feel myself, these are the state of the art, there's no question about it. My iPhone works perfectly, by the way. No problem with it. What you're doing here is that what has happened here a long time ago when Winthrop had these phones come about, mine never worked, and I was at the Verizon complaint, put up antennas, etc. This here is what you're doing is to cut down the radio waves over the ocean. Because the radio waves here in Winthrop is surrounded by water. You got radio waves, etc., coming from airports, from ships, and what happens is why the phones never worked in the first place, and why you want to put these up is you can prove me wrong, because I'm a Dory farmer, is that the radio waves, what you're doing here is to cut down the radio waves going over the ocean. Now, if you can prove me wrong that radio waves do not do that, tell me. But that's the reason why you put in the state of the art. And I think, why is the one way up high in the sea level of the water tower and one way down below? How many feet difference is that?
Well, these are not point-to-point signals, right? This is.
It's a transmitter, isn't it? The transmitter
It's propagating out. It's
but
not.
Is it not true that radio waves over the ocean cuts down the frequencies? Yes or no?
I don't.
This gentleman here is a physicist.
Yeah, no, I'm not technically versed in that, but what I can tell you is, because I was at the zoning board on this hardware store site.
My course and my educational background stays with us.
Okay, but when we were at the zoning board, one of the things we talked with them about was the fact that this hardware store site was needed in part because the airport was pulling
All I'm
signals.
saying is that by this feet here, 74 feet above sea level, and this is the only one I know, and the Ace Hardware Store, there's the church, how many feet above sea level is that? How many feet above sea level is the water tower?
It's not really above sea level, it's not really.
Yeah, we can
serving into the network, but the point about the ocean is a good one, because with the hardware store site, one reason that was needed is Logan Airport was pulling signal out of
That's
Winthrop
right.
and exhausting the capacity of the service, because everybody at Logan has a smartphone, right? And where years ago that wasn't as important, now they were drawing the signal in. That hardware store site serves Winthrop, and it lets the Logan site serve Logan, and it corrects for the overutilization of that sector on the church site.
Good, well, thank you.
Can't make call in my office.
Okay, good. Are there any other comments or questions? Then if not, I'm going to...
I have one.
Yes, sir. Identify yourself.
My name's Stephen Scally, and I live at 282 Pleasant Street. In fact, this is my house right here. And I want everybody to know, this is an area that there were 3 trees located. There was one right here where the gentleman's standing, one here, which I think are 3 of them, and there was one here. If you look at the pole itself, this isn't a utility pole. There's nothing on the pole. The reason there's nothing on the pole is because it's a support pole for across the street. Now, on March 4th, this is the absolute worst location. And to reiterate what the chief said, there are at least 4 car accidents here. Most recently on February 13th, a car hit the pole and on fire. Happens at least 3 or 4 times a year. So Verizon's asking us, what this is a safety issue. This isn't an issue about whether or not our cell phone's gonna work. It's about whether or not this pole and whether or not the public safety. On March 4th, my office, I sent out, and I know I did speak to Councilor Barone and Councilor Delvetto, they said they're for this. And they said that about a month ago, according to council, that there was some meetings with this. On March 4th, and I do have copies, I sent certified letters. I sent them to Verizon. I sent them to National Grid. I sent them to the town, saying this pole had been hit. Now, this pole, this wire right, if you look at the pole itself, not one wires on that pole. Not one. The reason there's nothing on that pole is because this is, as I said, a support pole. Now, they have illegally put, we feel, their wires on our property. We never asked them to put that there. In fact, on March 4th, look at the pole. I'd like to, you guys can look at this. Look at the condition of this pole. This isn't a pole that, it's been hit a number of times. It's gorged. It's leaning over. It's about to topple over. We contacted everybody, nobody. And finally, the only response I got, and I will be happy to provide you, ladies and gentlemen, with a copy of a certified letter that we sent on March 4th, asking who owned the pole. Because the guide wires, the most recent car accident, the pole, the guide wires, it was all coming off and slapping into the pole. Nobody cared. And more importantly, look at the bottom of the pole. Look at look at this. Now, we're not making this up. This is at least 12 inches from where it was only 2 years ago. Now, there was a tree located here. The tree supported the transformer across the street. The tree's gone because it's been hit so many times. So they put the pole in a couple of years ago. Look at the condition of the pole. This is a safety issue. The chief's right. 3 or 4 times it's hit a year. Now, they told you that they've done the same thing in Winchester. Winchester is a place that's a wooded area. Amesbury, same thing. This is in the middle of the worst intersection, the worst curve in Winthrop. That's why there's nothing on this pole. This isn't just about aesthetics. This is about safety. 5 feet off the ground, the chief will tell you, the glass tower's on fire. Look at the pole. It doesn't look like this anymore. You have pictures in your hand. This is safety. This shouldn't be here. We're opposed to it. We have 50 signatures from everybody in the area. They're opposed to it. They're asked to say, oh, there's no wires on this pole. Let's use this pole. This is a utility pole. This pole is a pole that's used to support the other poles. I'd ask that you guys vote no.
Good, thank you. Town manager?
Given that presentation, I would ask the applicant to consider an alternate location and to determine whether an alternate location can achieve the objectives of your application.
Mr. Ciotis, from Precinct 5.
Thank you, Mr. Driscoll. I'd just like to say that I grew up right around the corner at 249 Pleasant Street. My family still lives there. And I didn't witness 3 accidents a year. I witnessed 3 accidents a summer for about 20 years. I've seen that pole knocked down. I've seen the pole in front of Sergeant Street knocked down. I've actually gotten out where I've helped people who are not Winthrop residents or Winthrop residents out of cars. It is such a hazard and a danger, and it's just also a danger to people who have families, like the Ferretra family who has 4 young children right exactly in front of that pole. And I don't know if anybody considered the families and the kids in there. The second point I wanted to make was considering Verizon has locations at Ace, St. John's, and the Elks, then why don't you upgrade your equipment at those 3 sites? And instead of going into a really densely populated residential area. The third thing I want to bring up is the point you mentioned about Amesbury. Have you been to Amesbury?
I was there this afternoon.
Okay. Have you been to Amesbury, Doctor?
I have.
Okay.
My sister used to live there.
I was in Amesbury 3 times this year. Amesbury has probably 10 to 15 miles of square area. We're 1.2 square miles. And we are so densely populated, maybe one of the most densely populated towns in the state of Massachusetts. You go to Amesbury and put that same cell in 20 or 30 areas. Right here, that's a very, very dangerous spot. The last thing I wanted to mention was that, for me, it's the concern of the children. There's so many children in this neighborhood, their safety. I don't know how those electromagnetic waves work. In addition to that, about 20 years ago, we were never notified, but there's a box on the next street over on Somerset Avenue, that's a utility box that's there that Verizon has already put up. So you're talking 1, 2, and this would be a third one in the same area. And if Massport is intercepting the signal from ACE, then maybe you should put a cell in Massport, have Massport take up that cost, and maybe you could fund the other 3 locations here, and we can go without any more of these cells.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions? Yes, please identify.
Yes, my name is Deanna Ferretra, and I'm in Precinct 5. I live at 274 Pleasant Street, and that pool's right outside of my house. I'm adamantly opposed to its installation for many reasons. 1, the safety concern. 2, you were mentioning how it's a newer technology and that there's no health risk, but I don't feel confident in that because there's no long-term evidence to show that 20 years from now my kids won't have any health implications from having these radio waves right outside of their bedroom window. Not to mention that box is going to only be 5 feet off of the ground. We have little kids riding bikes up and down and go walking with the kids all the time. This is a residential area that does not need this type of technology in this location. It's not an appropriate space for it. There are many other places that you could find to support the technology, the Verizon. I have Verizon Wireless. I have never, not once, lost a call on my own home. I can use my iPad, I can use my signals, I've never lost a call, I've never had a signal issue, not once, and I use Verizon Wireless. So to say that the people of this area need increased service is something I strongly disagree with. Now, I just became aware that this was even happening because I didn't know that they wanted to do this. And just in the last 2 days, I've gotten over 50 signatures of people who live in this immediate area who do not want this to go in. So,
You want to give them to us? Can we have those?
yeah?
You can make a copy if you want.
No, you can keep it.
Yeah. Thanks, Deanna. Great. Are there any other comments, questions?
Just as a comment, I'm very sympathetic to people's concerns with this. You know, we vetted all these same questions in the subcommittee meeting. The pole exists already. The safety hazard exists already. When we were looking at this situation, we were under the thought that we, due to the FCC rulings and state law, that unless there was a better location, we could not say no to this location. The service that was described to us, the area, the region that they are trying to cover, there was not a better location. And we did rely on the evidence presented by this man over here, Mr. Fox, who's the physicist.
Tom Hayes is the physicist. Michael Fox is the problem.
I'm sorry, Tom Hayes is the I got you too confused, excuse me.
We get confused a lot.
Yeah.
So we looked at that, and we had his information that he passed to us, that we vetted as a group. Councilor Boyajian is in here. So those were some of our reasons for positive approval on that.
Councilor Del Mento.
And I'll echo Councilor Vaughn's statements. That pole's there, it's been there for years. So I don't know.
No, it hasn't been there. No, that's not true.
We should.
It's been there for a number of years. More than 2 years, 3 years. The sidewalk looks, fairly old. The other situation is, nobody wants to admit to the fact that there are going to be more antennas going up all over. You have 2 options. You increase the sites that are the big sites that are there and exponentially increase the power of those sites, and the people around there, nobody wants to talk about them because they don't live there. Or we spread the burden with a lot of low power sites all over, so that everybody can use their smartphone when they want. Their kids can use them. We can use them. We can Google. We can play on Facebook while we're sitting watching TV. There's a demand. There's no stopping the need for transmission, for the bandwidth that we all want at our houses, but nobody wants it in their backyard. So we look at two options. We put a lot of big, high-powered sites in somebody's backyard, or we put a lot of little sites in everybody's backyard. And that's what, so what I'm hearing is everybody would rather have it somewhere else. Nobody wants to say, I'll give up using my phone. I'll give up using my data. I will not increase my demand. That's not happening. So whether it's this year, next year, the year after, the demand is exponentially increasing every year, and we have to look at the fact that it's going to happen. And unless we can prove that it's a hazard and there's a better alternative, there are other ways of permitting these without local input. So that's what we have to look at, the fact that we want to use our phones.
One more thing. When we were looking at health effects, the feeling on the committee was that the low-power small cell would have less health effect than the large radio head that was much more powerful and maybe more pernicious to the health. So when he showed us, I believe it was some type of graph that you showed the power exponentially going forth, emanating from the pole, radiating forward, and it's still well within what the FCC says they can do without our permission. The FCC is the one who makes that determination. This is a grant of location. They already have the location of the pole. Whether we say no to the device that's on the pole does not change the safety factor of someone smashing into it. No, it doesn't. So.
This gentleman has not spoken yet.
My name's Ron Beck. I live at 270 Pleasant Street, and about twice a year my place gets hit by cars. And I respect these gentlemen's opinions here, but I haven't heard anybody say that they're looking for improved service. We've heard everybody who said we don't want it. I'm against it for the aesthetics of it, because I put a lot of energy and a lot of money into making that place look, making our neighborhood look nice, and I think this is going to deteriorate from that.
Thank you. Dina, did you want to speak again? You're all set.
I wanted to kind of make a further point about like what the chief was saying. If we allow this contraption to go in, does that give them the right to further enhance or change or modify the equipment that they're putting on the pole? If they're putting on something that's 3x1 and they're putting this antenna and it's only emitting a safe amount of radiation right now, does that give them carte blanche to modify the equipment moving forward that may be at a higher rate of radio frequency emissions or whatnot?
Yeah. And then I think they answered that, but they weren't sure of the answer to that.
Yeah, but I can address the question. I can address the question about levels, which is, it's really not the town of Winthrop, it's the FCC and the federal government that requires us to comply with the regulations. So we couldn't put something on there that would exceed the FCC regulatory levels without being in violation of federal law.
So could I just ask that, as you all mentioned, this is a newer technology and this is something that's kind of like uncharted territory as far as placing these devices into residential neighborhoods. Right now, you're according to the FCC regulations, but moving forward 10 years, 20 years down the line, say there are health implications to this.
If the FCC changes their regulations, we have to comply with the
At that
changed
point, after,
regulations.
And
one of the things, for 20 years, there have been...
The people who live there, for my 4 young kids.
There have been cell sites in residential areas for many years. I mean, this is not a new thing to provide service in a residential area. It may be new in Winthrop, the way your town is laid out. I think we've been able to locate in the church and on the hardware store and on the water tank. But in many communities, you don't have that option. They don't have a business district, and you are in a residential neighborhood. And as these small cells, propagate, these smaller cells are going into areas where they're needed, and many times they are residential areas. I also wanted to just mention one thing, that the device that's 5 to 8 feet off the ground, that's an electric meter. That's just like the electric meter on your house that's probably 5 to 8 feet off the ground, maybe less. That's not, that's not some unusual piece of equipment. The radio itself is 10 feet or more off the ground, and then the antennas at the top.
Thank you. This-
Yes, Christy Mattis, I live with Stephen at 282 Pleasant Street. I was there on February 13th when a car hit the pole, and I understand that the pole is already there, so this isn't adding an issue.
Mhm.
But the issue is that that car accident knocked free a support wire that stayed unfixed for weeks. For weeks it was flopping in the breeze. So when that pole is hit, and it will be hit, what is Verizon's duty to cure? And how long do they have? I can imagine wires hanging down, children in the neighborhood near it. It's going to happen. And then what is your duty to the town and to the residents to fix it in a timely manner? Secondly, I understand all the rules that you talked about in the FCC regulations, but I haven't heard anything that's described what could be a less vulnerable location, but nearly equally as effective from a transmission perspective. And I think maybe that work has been done, I haven't heard it here tonight, but both of those things would be helpful. How long to fix things when something happens, because it will. And is there not another location that's less vulnerable, but nearly equally effective?
How long to fix things, I can tell you, Verizon Wireless has 24/7 monitoring on their cell site. If that cell site goes out, they're going to know it within a matter of minutes. And in order to respond to it, they can send somebody out to fix it. We don't own that pole, but I'm sure if there was a guy wire or another problem, they get in touch with the people who do own the pole, which is national.
But they don't do that.
Well, you keep saying that, but you haven't contacted Verizon Wireless. You contacted Verizon Telecommunications.
Well, hold on. Who did I contact? I'll show you a certified letter dated March 4th. I contacted all you people. In fact, look at the condition that the pole with the sidewalk, they won't even fix around the pole, never mind the pole itself. You're saying that they do it 24 hours a day, but sir, they don't. The truth is, they won't and they don't.
Thank you. Chief.
Real quick, just so you know, every time a pole gets struck, we call Verizon, because they take care of the poles in winter. Verizon has been on strike, but at that accident, Verizon was called. What you have to understand, telephone poles, as you leave the lights of Woodside Highway, the poles are all on the left-hand side of the street. So when you hit Court Road, we have taken the front porches off of those three houses from Court Road up to Waldemar several times. You people should feel fortunate every time that pole catches a car, because it's hitting your house if it doesn't catch the pole. Then what happens is when you get to the top of Sergeant Street, the poles go from the left-hand side to the right-hand side. So all my wish is, if this does get approved, can we tie Verizon Wireless up with some softening, as in I've heard this gentleman replace, we used to have 3 trees. Can we start the softening process with Verizon? We are, if you do choose to vote this, can we tie it to some sizable trees, which also will work as car catchers for the neighborhood? Because whether you like it, it doesn't matter if we're running fiber on a pole, whatever, the poles are there, they are hazardous, but the houses that are the safest on Pleasant Street are the houses with poles in front.
Mr. President?
Council Boncour.
Yes, I wanted to pick up on something I think Jim Lettieri had started earlier. I don't know if I can vote for this location where it's this close to residential homes, and there's a big concern, a number of complaints about safety. When 2 blocks away, less than 2 blocks away, we got the high school, middle school that's going to be closing, and we're going to be looking to rent the roof of that building, I'm sure. And is this just a money issue because you already own the pole, whereas you could move it to the top of the high school, middle school, but there you'd have to pay rent to the town?
This is a technology issue, and Dan can tell you what they're looking to serve.
Well, what's the difference of 2 blocks at the most?
I mean, Verizon is trying to target they're trying to provide service to a very targeted area, which is around they have identified this intersection of Pleasant Street and the surrounding residential areas as a hotspot of the network usage. They're monitoring exactly what the traffic is within this highlighted footprint. They've identified that a new facility right around this area, the area, will provide the additional capacity. They'll offload this existing sector, which will improve coverage elsewhere within that footprint. So the targeted area, in some sense, users outside of just this neighborhood will experience some benefit.
And what difference does the 2 blocks make?
At a site like this, it would make pretty big difference. If Verizon was to lease an entire rooftop, they would not deploy just the small cell. They would use that space to their advantage and deploy a full macro site, which includes a number of antennas and radios, higher power output. I know we keep talking about putting this in the vicinity of a residential neighborhood. A few months ago, the Board of Appeals did approve a facility, full macro site on the rooftop of Governor's Park condos. So for example, that's residential as well.
Council Del
And that is located in the the gray symbol up in the top right.
And that's exactly what I've been trying to say, and that is, you're putting these big sites in residential areas, but just the people don't want to talk about the people who live in those residential areas. There are houses next door to the water tower, but we have a high-powered site on the roof there. There are houses next door to the Elks. We have a high-powered site there. There's an apartment building across the street from the Oddfellows Lodge and the church across the street. There are high-powered sites there. People, and we're talking about a site that's not even 1/100th of the wattage of these sites that we have all over in residential areas. So for somebody to say it's an issue in a residential area, we've put them in these residential areas, and they're there to stay. And what we have to look at is, do we want smaller sites, more smaller sites, or do we want a lower number of high-powered sites? And that's where we're at.
One more question. The people that live right in front of that pole said they don't have any problems with their reception. So who's got a problem over there? And if you're only going a block in each direction, it doesn't sound like...
I'd like to just make a comment. So that's a very small area. I'm sure you're not familiar with Winthrop, but that looks like Pleasant Street in the maze. So if Mr. Retro went around and asked every resident who's a Verizon customer if they're having a problem, and there's no complaints, okay, then there's no sense of putting this in. Is that correct?
Well, Verizon also needs to be proactive with the network design. We can't wait for the network to crumble and then we fix it. So they're constantly monitoring the existing, or various performance indicators, the existing capacity. And they also need to include forecasted growth rates as well. In this particular case, this site is overloaded. It is already exceeding capacity. And at the subcommittee, I believe there were examples thrown out of people talking about inadequate service. Even tonight, somebody had to get a networking stuff.
Thank you.
So one other question on that. So you're both with Verizon, I assume, right?
I am an independent consultant.
Okay, are you with Verizon?
I'm an outside attorney.
You're their attorney, okay. Yeah. So do they have a nonprofit organization? Verizon, they have a nonprofit wing, right? So instead of putting in front of residential, why don't you come in and work with the community and use some of your nonprofit funding, and maybe we can make an area near the middle school where you can go in there and maybe put something like that in there. Instead of going to a residential area, go to an area that a town that near Ingleside Park that has an open area. And you can work with the community. You can put some money into the community.
It's an interesting idea.
Or maybe you could knock down the middle school for us.
Now, Nick, you're out of control. That's enough.
Just throwing ideas out there.
Heather, did you have another
Yes,
question?
I don't disagree with Councilor Del Vento, and I also wanted to follow up on Mr. McKenna's comments that it would be very helpful to get more information on why other sites are not a better alternative. Maybe there's another pole that isn't quite so close to homes, or is a little bit more aesthetically pleasing, and I think we need a little bit more information.
I agree.
Can I add to that? That there's...
You may, sir.
Sorry, Mike Fox with Vital Site Services. All the poles on that street are equal distance from the houses, so I, personally don't think going to a different pole will affect the distance from the house or affect the aesthetics. It's still going to look the same. It's still going to be near houses.
Good. Any other?
The one last thing I want to say is this is about Verizon Wireless, but what about AT&T, T-Mobile, and all the other carriers? If we say yes to one, does that mean we're now opening up the possibility of having these everywhere?
Yeah,
I just want that to be a thought.
It's a good thought, and I don't know the answer to that, but let me kind of try to summarize this as best I can. I think what we're hearing is that this process that we're going through, we're going to vote on this tonight, a little bit later. This council will vote on this. What I'm hearing is that even if this council votes no for this, that through some process, it's likely if it can't be shown that that there's a better alternative, that we're probably not gonna be successful in stopping this from happening. That's one thing that I think. Second thing is that I think a second issue has come up here in this discussion, which is the safety of that corner, which isn't exactly directly related to this issue, yet it's caused good conversation to go on. But I think we need to think about addressing the safety of that corner somehow. The third thing is that if this were to go forward and this apparatus were to be put on the pole, if we do try to change something in that area, like removing that pole or doing something to make it safe, we may actually deter our ability to do that by having this apparatus added. So that's a thought that I have in my head when I vote. So barring any other conversation, an hour and 10 minutes into it, I hope everybody got a lot out of this. We are going to vote on this evening, and I'm going to close the public hearing. Okay, it's closed. Thank you. That was good. Good conversation. All right.
No comment.
Thank you very much for coming. Okay. I don't even want to say this, but the next section of the meeting is public comment. Mr. Gill, please make it short.
Tough being on this side of the table because I can't just raise my hand and get recognized. Just I want to express my appreciation to the council for their support and confidence in my appointment to the Housing Authority. And I appreciate that. But while I'm up, I'm going to be on to a different subject because it is public comment. We're going to be given the opportunity 2 weeks from today to make an investment in an athletic facility for the community. It's not a school project only. It's an investment in a year-round athletic facility for this community. I use the word investment rather than cost. There is some misinformation, with some concerns about what's happening out there. What is this project? And there have been, on Community Forum with Ron Vecchia this past week, there was a presentation made, and it's run on CAT. Also, there's a Winthrop's Worth It Facebook page that has information on it. I have information if anybody tonight would like to have it. I'm not going to stand here for half an hour and tell you what it is. And there is a community meeting next Monday night down at the PSA, so anybody is welcome to come to that. I will also give you my phone number, not my home number, my cell number. If anybody has any question that I can answer for you, I would be happy to, if I don't have the answer, to research it. But again, I want to just make the point that we have the opportunity to make an investment in an athletic facility for the whole community, multi-season, soccer, rugby, and all of the other games that are played there. It's not just a football field. So I would appreciate it if anybody has any questions. Please give me a call. I'll come to the meeting next Monday night. Watch CAT and hop on to the Winthrop's Worth It Facebook page. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
And don't forget to vote.
Don't forget to vote. Any other public comment? Okay, hearing none. Correspondence, we've had quite a bit of correspondence, but I'll just summarize this quickly. First, there's a letter that we received from FEMA that describes the changes in the flood zone that happened in Winthrop as a result of their legislation, or not legislation, but their findings, or the whole process that went on for a year. That, I think that's on the website. We'll have that on the website if people want to see what properties are on that list. We've had a lot of correspondence about the meeting at the DCR, an awful lot of correspondence, probably all of us physically, telephone calls, emails, and there's more to come on that. I'm sure we'll have to, we're strategizing about our next steps. I'm not going to read all of that correspondence. And that's it for now. So now let's go to committee reports. Finance?
Mr. President, Finance Committee met earlier tonight, and I'm trying to pull up my notes on it. We had several items before us. Transfer from, to cover the FEMA issue that we had a public hearing on. We also had some small items to close $15,000 to close the special revenue fund, $36,000 for the ferry budget we went over tonight, $24,900 for an unmarked police vehicle from council reserve, $1,800 from free cash to insurance recovery for a special police reserve account, $4,900 from free cash to Green Communities deficit fund, and $23,400 to cover the June ballot question, as well as the authorization for $20,000 for the inspectional services revolving fund that we'll be taking up later. We adjourned at 7 o'clock, just in time for this meeting, and all came through positive.
Good. Thank you, Counselor. DPW Committee, would you like to?
I'd like to rehash this. The DPW Committee met on May 24th at 6:30 p.m. in the council chambers. Present was myself as chair, Councilor Del Vento, and Councilor Boyajian. Also present was Jim McKenna, town manager, and for Verizon, Catherine Bailey, attorney with Robinson & Cole, Michael Fox of Vital Site Services, Donald Hayes, radiation safety consultant who just left the room, I think, Daniel Brown of C-Squared Systems, he's the RF engineer. There was about an hour's worth of discussion concerning the safety concerns, and health studies were presented, discussion of radio interference possibly with police, fire, and also people's personal television sets and such. The location of the site was discussed and the reasons for choosing it, and also the installation process. There was a motion made by Councilor Boyajian to recommend positive action on this, positive recommendation to the council. Second was by Del Vento, Councilor Del Vento. The vote was unanimous. The motion to adjourn came in at 7:35, and the meeting was adjourned.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Town Manager's report.
Yes, good evening. We have already discussed some issues with respect to the ferry, so I'll keep that issue brief, except to say that we have now an amended schedule. I know that the schedule has changed somewhat over the past month because we're trying to fine-tune, the best way to serve the public. We have adjusted it. This will be the schedule now going forward for the summer months, and it includes an addition of Spectacle Island so that folks can visit this Spectacle Island as well as go to and from Boston. So I announced that that schedule is now available and will be made available online as well. We are in the process of implementing the B&B ordinance as amended by the council to include Airbnb applications, and we're working through some issues with respect to that. That we should have that application process ready to go in the next week. We did receive our funding from the state for the Belle Isle Ecology Marine Ecology Park development, so that project will be moving forward. And I have asked the DPW subcommittee to review and add some expertise to the plan and the proposed scope of work, and I'll hopefully get to have a meeting with you and Steve Cowell, the director of DPW, to fine-tune that so that we can give our marching orders to our consultants to move on with the engineer. We have engaged in some brief discussions with Mass DOT with respect to Winthrop Street corridor. We're trying to determine if there's any available funding that we can apply to the first phase of that. We have started those discussions, and we hope to bring back further comment to the council on the progress of those conversations. The project for the first phase is fully engineered, so we feel that we can manage a project very successfully and get that, at least the phase from Metcalf Square down to McGee's Corner addressed if we can get some support from state funding sources. So we're aggressively pursuing that at the moment. I want to report that the MBTA is raising its fares. And so we have put out on the blog and on the website what those fare increases look like for July 1. Both Blue Line and bus service and all service, frankly, is going up at some level. So if you're a user of the MBTA, you need to be aware of the fare increases that are going forward. We did appoint a new firefighter, Rocco Festa, a gentleman from Winthrop.
Yes.
Chief, you want to just tell us who this gentleman is?
Yes, Rocco Fester is appointed, the manager in his fiscal 17 budget has replaced the firefighter position. He's a veteran, he lives on Bowden Street, and he'll be, going for his physical this week. We want to have him up and running for the first of the fiscal year, rather than starting the process after and it takes several months through vacation period that we're without.
Great.
I'd also ask the police chief to report on both the bicycle rodeo and the Special Olympics coming up. Chief?
Sure, thank you. Special Olympics will be this Saturday. We invite all the Winthrop Police Association in conjunction with our Special Olympics here locally. I have this event every year. It's at Miller's Field. I think it's the actually only field and track event that has happened there officially over the last 10 years. So, it'd be nice to have a new track for the Special Olympics as well. But we invite everyone down there from 10 to 1. The Police Association cooks hamburgers and hot dogs for everyone that shows up, as well as the Olympians. And then also the following Saturday on the 18th, we'll be doing our annual bike rodeo. With the funding secured by the Speaker of the House through our Child Safety Grant, and that's going to be behind the existing high school right now on Brookfield Road, and that's going to be 10 to 1 as well. And burgers and hot dogs, as well as an ice cream truck, will be there, and free helmets for everyone who shows up. So our goal is to make sure the kids are safe and that they're wearing those helmets out there. And they're protected throughout the summer. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
And I asked the CFO to give a report since we're closing in on the end of the fiscal year.
So we are closing in on the end of the fiscal year, and that's why there are a number of transfers before you. Most of them are simple housekeeping items. A few of them are closing out deficits and special revenue funds that have existed previously, so they're funds that their purposes were used and the fund didn't quite have enough in it to accomplish its purpose, so there was a slight deficit, and those have been in existence for, in some cases, over a year. So we're just closing those out so that they stop hitting our free cash and their purposes are over, so there's no sense in keeping them open. With that same token, we are also closing some special revenue funds that have surpluses, and transferring that balance to the free cash. Again, things that are no longer useful, there's no sense in keeping them open, so we're just cleaning up some things, trying to get it so that everything is in as good of order as possible for the end of the fiscal year.
Great.
That's my report.
Thank you. Good. I'm going to propose that we take a very quick 5-minute recess, if that's okay with everyone. 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to begin real quickly. School committee update. There was a school committee meeting last night. I'll just mention a few things that we talked about. It was a good meeting. They talked about a summer reading program. We reviewed a Winthrop High School, the coach and athletic handbook, which is really interesting. It's a really well-written document that puts a lot of things in there, not only about sports, but about bullying and things like that. So it's been referred to a committee of on the school committee that will review it and come back with recommendations. We discussed the transfer of the Pauline Street property, the timing of that to the town, probably sometime in September. We discussed the timing for a new school ribbon cutting ceremony, probably sometime in late September, which is kind of exciting. There's going to be some tours for students and families. They're going to have an open house for students and families before school starts, so they get a feel for what the building is like and they get a tour of it. And we also voted to name a section of the building. It's actually an area near the cafeteria, the high school cafeteria. It's being named in honor of the Viking Pride Foundation. That was a recommendation from John Lucero, and we put that forward. So that's the update on the school, and now we're going to go into old business. So we're going to hear from Miriam. She's going to come up. Miriam's
I'm the stand-in for Bob Wynn.
yeah, Miriam
Regan Fiore with the Finance Commission, and other members are here, and Bob couldn't make it, so he did what he could to find a stand-in. So you all got the letter dated May 31st from the Finance Commission. I'm not going to read the whole thing, just highlight a few points. First of all, we recommend the town manager's 2017 budget with one amendment. Specifically, we're recommending the reallocation of $18,000 from the Essex Technical School budget to inspectional services. The Essex Technical was budgeted for 3 students, they're only going to have 2. By transferring that small amount, inspectional services can get a part-time clerk and then facilitate having more field inspections. So we recommend that. Overall, the budget is balanced. We felt it's based on reasonable assumptions. It's consistent with the town's financial goals, and it provides sufficient resources to maintain core services. A few notable things that this budget includes is a new regional dispatch center. That was at a cost of $192,000, which includes the startup costs, so we hope in future years it will be less. That remains to be seen. The budget includes some reorganization in the police department, which will position the department to undertake the process towards state accreditation. There's funding of the firefighter position, so the fire department will have a full complement, as the chief mentioned. The library was funded to meet minimum state accreditation standards, and that hadn't happened for a few years, so that was progress. And it also included this year, a few of the budgets, a modest amount of recurring capital expense. You don't have to wait, some of the departments don't have to wait to free cash to plan some of their ongoing capital expenditures, so that was a change that Michael had this year. And all the enterprise funds have a positive retained earnings. With this budget recommendation and outlined in the letter, we offered a few comments and recommendations for your consideration. The first is the Winthrop ferry, we discussed that earlier. $100,000 is allocated in fiscal 17. As we all know, there's been challenges with prior attempts, so our recommendation is to have at least a quarterly review of the ferry services and a comparison to plan to make sure you're gauging its long-term viability. We also wanted to note we concur with the water and sewer rates being combined. The MWR rate assesses excuse me, one rate. Both are under the DPW. They have shared services, so keeping these separate doesn't seem to make much sense anymore. And that's actually consistent with the Finance Commission's study and recommendation from 2014. And we also note this has no impact on what people will pay. It's cost neutral. We also concur with the shift this year for schools, employee benefits to the town's appropriation for the schools. There was discussion and concern expressed about the allocation of those funds. Ultimately, we believe under the watchful eye of the CFO that there is sufficient control to ensure these funds are allocated to fully fund employee benefits within the school department budget. Also within the school budget, there was some concern expressed about utility expenses with the new middle school, high school. Obviously, you need a year to make sure you know what those expenses are. So the concern was it could be under budgeted. Our recommendation is, particularly as we hit the second half of fiscal 17, to monitor those closely. And then finally, we want to recognize the financial discipline that has resulted in a stabilization reserve of $3 million as of the end of December 2015. Certainly, it's greatly improved the town's financial standing, and we want to encourage that the funding policy that was put in place 2 years ago be continued. We do expect free cash will be a little bit lower from the fiscal 17 budget. But however, that funding policy should continue. And then in closing, I just want to say thank you to the town manager, the CFO, the department heads, and on behalf of the commission, thank you for your cooperation and time.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's yeah, good. That committee does a great deal of work. I mean, this process to do the budget, I was on this committee for a while. It starts in February and it just ended a couple of weeks ago. They put a great deal of time in there. They really come to understand the finances of the town, working with Michael and Jim. Great job, really. I think a lot of things that are happening this year have come from years of discussions, whether it's combining the water and sewer rate or having the benefits go to the school. It's been discussed for a long time, and a lot of things just came to fruition this year. I think, Michael, you deserve a lot of credit. I think your version of the budget was actually entertaining to read. I actually it was educational. It really helped kind of spell out what all the functions are of all the different departments, and it was really, really good. I applaud you for that. So thank you, everybody. So we'll take a vote on the budget now. I think, so there's we'll take, I think well, go ahead, sorry.
No, I went out for amendment, we'll get to that, once we get to the table.
Okay. So first, the vote will be for the town council to adopt the town manager's proposed annual fiscal year 17 operating and capital budget of $46,669,447.
So moved.
So moved. Second? Second. Is there discussion or amendment?
You made the amendment on the 18,000.
Mr. President, I'd like to make an amendment as recommended by the Finance Commission, which would increase, the motion would be to increase the inspection services personnel line by $18,000 to $271,428, and reduce the Essex Technical High School line by $18,000 to $36,846.
That's a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. So now is there any other discussion or amendments that anyone wishes to make? Okay, hearing none, we'll vote on the budget as amended. There's a conversation. Are we all set to vote on the budget? Okay, so we'll have a motion to vote on the budget as amended.
Mr. President, can we hang on 1 second? I'm going to take a quick look on the allocation for 2017 ferry. Is it $100,000 or $125,000?
The general fund subsidy for the ferry is $100,000.
And the appropriation for the account is?
The total appropriation for the ferry enterprise is, so
It would be the total expense for the year.
yeah, the total,
I just want to make sure we get it.
the total annual budget for the ferry is $392,350.
Okay, so appropriation is big enough to
Yes.
cover the 125.
Right, that's consistent with the plan. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. President.
There's no need to make any other changes. So we'll vote. I'm sorry. We need a roll call. So, no other. Okay. We'll take a roll call on the budget as amended by Council Del Vento.
Council Inman? Yes. Council Callow? Yes. Council Sanford?
Yes.
Council Boncory?
Yes.
Council Barone?
Yes.
Council Boyajin? Council Del Vento?
Yes.
Vice President Lettieri? President Driscoll?
Yes. Okay. So we have a budget for 17.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael. And the committee.
Yeah. Nice work.
Do you want to pass that to the clerk? That's the motion.
Okay, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next item under old business, we talked about this morning, this morning. Seems like a long time ago. The motion, sorry, need sleep. Motion to move that the council vote to transfer $259,000 from Fund 932, General Stabilization to MEMA Fund 583, for the amount being appealed to FEMA for the fiscal 2015 winter storms, or take any other action thereto. Could I have a motion?
Yeah, by the finance committee?
They came back from the finance committee.
Oh, comes from finance, so no second.
And that, yeah, and that also requires a 6 votes.
So we need to do a
Roll
roll
call.
call.
Roll call.
So coming from committee needs no second. Roll call?
Council Lehman? Yes. Council Callow? Yes. Council Sanford?
Yes.
Council Boncory?
Yes.
Council Barone?
Yes.
Council Boyajin? Council Del Vento?
Yep.
Vice President Lettieri? President Driscoll?
Yes. Next item is a motion that the town council vote the use of free cash in the amount of $125,000 to fund the Ferry Enterprise Fund 660 for the balance of fiscal year 2016, or take any other action relative thereto. This is coming out of committee with a positive recommendation. Does I have a motion?
Coming out of committee.
Come on, committee.
Okay,
Okay.
motion second.
Okay, does not require 2/3, so we'll, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It passes. The next item is to move that the town council vote the use of free cash in the amount of $36,250 to fund the ferry vessel special revenue fund unrecognized balance of the town match number 537, or take any other action thereto. Coming out of committee with positive recommendation. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Next item, move that the council transfer $24,990 from the town council reserve account number 0111052576 to general fund special article FY16 police unmarked vehicle replacement, or take any other action relative thereto. This is coming out of committee. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Next item, move that the town council vote the use of free cash in the amount of $23,400 to fund the June ballot question for the town clerk's office by funding account number 0116151512005, election personnel, or take any other action relative thereto. Coming on committee. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Next, to move that the town council vote to renew the site plan review revolving fund, Mass General Law 44, Chapter 53E in 1/2, with an estimated revenue of $20,000 for fiscal year 2017. This revolving fund is under the authority of the Commissioner of Inspectional Services. The account balance at the close of each fiscal year is authorized to remain in the revolving fund, or to take any other action thereto.
Roll call.
That revolving fund requires a 2/3 vote, so we need to take a roll call.
Council Ingman? Yes. Council Callow? Yes. Council Sanford?
Yes.
Council Boncory?
Yes.
Council Barone?
Yes.
Council Boyajin? Council Del Vento?
Yep.
Vice President Lettieri? President Driscoll?
Yes. Next item is to move that the town council vote to close the following special revenue funds by transferring the balances to the general fund. There are probably 15 or 20 of these accounts with relatively small balances. I won't read them all, but the total is $15,020.63. Coming out of committee with a positive recommendation. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. To move that the town, next item, to move that the town council vote the use of free cash in the amount of $4,905.64 to fund the Green Communities 2013 Special Revenue Fund Deficit 531, or take any other action thereto, coming out of committee. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? No. Okay. The next item is, I move that, to move that the town council vote the use of free cash in the amount of $1,872.59 to fund insurance recovery, police special revenue fund deficit 711, or take any other action relative thereto. Coming out of committee. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. And this next item is the vote on the wireless. Is there a-
I'd like to ask for a 30-second recess and talk to Nick Delfento
Okay,
on the budget.
then we're going to take a 30-second
Well,
recess.
1 minute. Give me one.
All right. As much time as you need, Jim.
You know, I paid.
Thank you.
Both come out of recess. Are we all set?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, we need to, I don't have, is there a motion for the Verizon? Or is it-
Coming out of committee, coming out of...
Came out of
do you have-
committee.
Could you recognize the
Motion.
applicant, please?
Yes.
Council President, so there was a suggestion, I think, at one point by one of the councilors that we think about, at least investigate further whether there's another pole in that area. We're willing to do that investigation. I know there were a lot of questions raised today and some new information from the neighbors that we weren't aware of. We'd like to look into that.
Okay.
If we could be given I guess I would appreciate if we could reopen the hearing, but then continue it to a date, maybe in July, when we could come back with
Yeah.
additional information, if that's okay with you.
I'll make a motion to table the issue until the second meeting in July.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Good. Opposed? Thank you for that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Now we have several, I'm sorry.
Because on these upcoming motions, these are actually all part of the budget motion. They were all advertised within the budget package, and they were all specific to items within the budget, so they could and all should be voted tonight, because they've already been advertised.
Okay. So we'll vote, these will be all voted tonight.
Hopefully vote them all tonight.
Okay. Okay. Then I will read these. What do I got here?
I think the first one we already did.
I think we already did that.
Yeah, the town council vote's all set. I was looking for the 50,000. So, the motion is pursuant to this is regarding the Council on Aging revolving account. So pursuant to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53E and a half, in accordance with the Charter of the Town of Winthrop, I move that the Town Council vote to authorize the revolving account entitled COA Revolving Account, Council on Aging. Said account will be funded by miscellaneous receipts collected by the Council on Aging and be used to provide services to the elderly through Council on Aging. The limit on the total amount which may be expended from this fund is set at $50,000. Additionally, any balances remaining at the end of the fiscal year will remain with said fund or take any other action thereto. Is this coming out of committee?
No.
No, so we need.
No, I'll make all the motions.
Okay, motion, second, so
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It passes. Here it is. Next motion, to move that the town council vote to accept Mass General Law, Chapter 60, Section 15B, which allows the town of Winthrop to establish the tax title revolving account for the treasurer collector effective July 1, 2016 in the amount of $26,000 or take any other action thereto. Do we need a 2/3 on that? Revolving account?
No.
No?
No, this is just authorization of the,
Okay,
I'll second it.
okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. This next one, to move that the town council transfer $15,000 from town council reserves account number 0111052576100 to town attorney line number 0115152544350 or take any other action thereto. Your motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Discussion?
Discussion?
Yeah, why are we doing this?
This is to pay the estimate of the balance in that account for this fiscal year.
Okay, I mean, we owe an extra 15,000 over the contracted amount
We have
For a
incurred legal expenses for the balance of the year that we need to pay.
Well, my question is, it for town council? Is it
We
for?
pay it, no, it's not, it's to pay expenses that have been drawn out of the council, the town attorney line item, to pay the legal bills that we've incurred.
Still, my question is it for hired regular town council, Copeland and Page, or is it for one of the other attorneys that are
It's for
handling other
both.
things?
It's for both. We have some legal bills from both Labor Council and our town attorney that we estimate we will need to make the difference up for the balance of the year.
Could we see like a summary?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Of those, just so.
Absolutely.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Okay. This is, okay, pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 53, F 1.5, I think it means E and 1/2. In accordance and with the charter of the town of Winthrop, I move that the town council vote to adopt the town manager's proposed annual operating and capital budget for fiscal 2017 for the following enterprise funds, inclusive of personnel, salaries, operating expenditures, and capital expenses provided therein. Harbor Master, $384,664. Water and Sewer, $8,339,698. The Ferry, $392,350. Recreation, $440,000. And the Rink, $350,420. And further, that to meet these expenditures, such user charges as necessary shall be authorized and assessed in accordance with those proposed rates and charges as set forth within the town manager's 2017 budget, inclusive of sums received and from other fees, permits, fines, and other designated sources, or to take any other action thereof. Have a motion?
Motion.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Motion pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 53, E&1/2, in accordance with the charter of the town of Winthrop, I move that the town council vote to authorize the revolving account entitled E.B. Newton Revolving Account as provided in the detailed summary of the town manager's budget for fiscal year 2017. And further, that to meet these proposed expenses, sums shall be received in rental revenue or other designated sources to be expended by the town manager for purposes of paying wages and expenses as provided therein. Additionally, any balance remaining at the end of fiscal year 2017 will remain with said fund or take any other action relative thereto. A motion? Second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in
Does it have
favor?
to be a revolving account? Does it have to be a roll call?
That's what we had another one.
It's not a roll call vote for the revolving fund, no.
No, it's just the authorization of, it's the reauthorization of the account.
Please take the vote.
Did we vote? I think we
No, we
voted.
didn't vote.
Oh,
We didn't vote yet, no.
do we get a second?
Next year, we're always in the motion.
They're trying to confuse me. Not difficult. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous.
Getting late, Bob.
The last one, to move that the town council vote to abolish the water enterprise fund and the sewer enterprise fund by combining these two enterprise funds in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53.5, to be further known as the Water and Sewer Enterprise Fund with an effective date of July 1, 2016, or take any other action thereto. Motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Okay, getting toward the end. Public comment? Is there any public comment? Okay, none? Hearing none?
Hurry up.
Thanks, Tony.
All right, good.
Thanks, Tony.
No, please. Several public relations announcements. June 11th, there's a rabies clinic from 9 to 11 a.m. at the old DPW building. June 11th, there's also Winthrop Improvement and Historical Association Antique and Appraisal Day. June 13th, it's been rescheduled from the 14th. June 13th is Deer Island Citizens Advisory Committee meeting at 7 p.m. in the Reception and Training Building on Deer Island. June 21st is the debt exclusion election. We're meeting on that day. And June 21st is also the Strawberry Festival at the Dean Winthrop House. August 20th is a classic car show at Ingleside Park. And June 28th is the next Economic Development Citizens Advisory Committee meeting. So I encourage everyone to go to that. Are there any others?
I have one more,
Yeah.
but I believe I'm going to be out on the 28th, so I'm going to ask Councilor Engman to chair that meeting if I'm not able to be there. Okay.
Isn't there a DCR meeting coming up in June as well?
I think
23rd.
20th.
The 22nd, it's the day, it's the Wednesday, it's the day after the council meeting.
Yeah, thank you.
22nd.
Yeah, so the next DCR meeting at the Leo Senior Center. Okay.
Yeah. Also, I've just got one more to add. The 8th Annual Winthrop Townwide Yard Sale, sponsored by the Chamber of Commerce, is this Saturday, June 11th, rain or shine from 9 to 1. It's over 75 people participating on the yard sale within 1.6 square miles. So encouraged to go out and find some valuable treasures in some of those homes.
Sounds good. Okay, motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.